And also coming up, minority in parliament wants government to halt plans to sell AT and migrate its customers onto the Telecel network, a move they fear could crush the sector.
While High Court sentences former human resource manager of Royal Cozy Hotel to life imprisonment for the murder of owner of the hotel, Eric Johnson, known as Jirapa Dubai.
And later in business, Institute for Fiscal Studies recommends government formally establish dedicated rice development board amid policy failures.
On the international front, U.S. revokes foreign visas over comments made about Charlie Kirk's death.
Be part of the show, and we will be happy to read your thoughts to the rest of the world. The details now.
Quote, Ghana risks the infiltration of terrorism linked to illegal mining if government does not treat the menace as an emergency, unquote. These are the words of mining and security risk consultant Liam Morrissey speaking in an interview with Grace Hamwajim, and he argued the increasing incidences of instability in the Sahel and Ghana's porous borders puts the country at risk.
There's a link between illegal mining and instability, as the proceeds from illegal mining have been linked to the financing of terrorist organizations for some time, according to the Bank of Ghana's Money Laundering and Terrorism Financing Risk Assessment for Environmental and Natural Resources Crime Report in 2024. As violent extremist groups lose ground in the Sahel, they are turning south looking for new sources of funding. Illegal gold mining is proving to be an easy target.
We can say that the Galamsey risk in this country is an emergency and the government needs to deal with it. Let's hope they're able to get ahead of it before these terrorist influences from outside creep in, because it will be far worse and far harder to arrest and recover otherwise. It's fair to say there is a threat to Ghana's borders, and the corrosive damage we've seen in the Sahelian states, cameos of it could occur here. But I'm quick to say, though, the authorities here understand this hazard, and I think they are working to get ahead of the curve. But there is no doubt that the threats we see playing out in the neighboring countries, they will come here if they're allowed.
Ghana has stepped up border surveillance and launched new operations against illegal mining. But experts say the fight must go beyond the excavators to follow the money and track where the gold ends up.
I think anything the government can do to safeguard its borders and to interdict illicit traffic is a good thing. Not just for dealing with the Galamsey peril, but so many other things as well, smuggling and so on. So border control is important. I think helping the armed forces and law enforcement work well together, and military civil police cooperation is very important. And then I think the other area is community engagement. There, we're talking about civil society, and that's the central point here.
I've implored government to adopt best practices in regulating illegal mining in the country.
Right, so let's look at the key issues being raised there and go to the phone lines and speak to Mutaru Mumuni Mukhtar, Executive Director for the West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. Good evening, sir, and thank you for your time.
Good evening to you, and good evening to your viewers and listeners.
We already know that the issues of Galamsey are quite clear and present in terms of the threat levels, but is there any linkage between a potential terrorism threat because of Galamsey?
Of course, I've listened to the person you interviewed regarding, this risk that he's speaking about. There is a very real danger and threat in terms of the fact that terrorists could take advantage of the very, very ungoverned and poorly organized space within here. Terrorists are very exploitative. They have a high exploitative capacity. They take advantage of spaces that are poorly regulated to exploit, the situation. Terrorists are always looking for resources to fund their operations, and illegal mining is one of those that provide that opportunity. And if you look at, the Sahel, within the Sahel, where terrorism has become very pervasive, they take advantage of those spaces to fund their operations. And so what he's talking about is not a conjecture. This is a very legitimate concern that should worry all state actors and all of us. And if you consider the reality of, ungoverned spaces, the reality of poorly manned borders, the porous borders that we have spoken about for so long, it is a very legitimate concern that extremist groups could take advantage of that to exploit our poorly organized mining spaces in our country. If we consider in the last couple of years, we have seen a lot of security breaches within the mining spaces and along the borders. And that should worry all of us. And I think that this conversation should provide opportunity for us to escalate our commitment to providing security, ensuring tight security measures along these areas, along the borders, and within the mining spaces in Ghana.
Right. And I mean, you've just touched on some of the recommendations expected. Can you maybe give us like 2 or 3 key things government should immediately start doing to ensure that we do not have that on our hands as we're already struggling dealing internally with issues of Galamsey?
At this point, the conversation we're having relates to the threat from external sources. And so we need to ensure that we commit to more and tighter security measures along the borders. As we speak, there is no any technology that allows our border security officers to be able to effectively determine the right, individuals who should come in, who should get out, or contraband, activities along the borders. Beyond that, we need to ensure that the mining spaces are very, very well tight in terms of security. We need to determine who operates in this space. As we speak, there's a huge number of, actors, nationals from all over the West African space who are operating in this space. And we do not have enough data in terms of who their resources are going to. And we need to put measures in place to be able to track all of those.
All right. Thank you so much, Mukhtar, for your thoughts and time on this particular subject.
Government needs to act to improve the general security situation in the country, particularly in the northern sector. This is according to NPP flag bearer hopeful and former Food and Agriculture Minister Brian Champon. He's also calling for a 90-day nationwide ban on all forms of mining to help restore Ghana's polluted water bodies. He believes halting operations temporarily, regardless of the financial impact, will give the country time to reset and return to responsible mining.
We have to avert our mind to it and deal with it now before it becomes a problem that we will not be able to get a hold on. And this challenge goes to government. It's a major problem. The public has to be educated. Citizens have to be told what to do. We have to put a stop. We have to put a stop to the situation. Galamsey, halt it for 90 days. Stop it. Everybody should stop mining in this country, regardless of the financial consequences. We have to agree that for the next 90 days, I'm not talking about even a state of emergency, 90 days, rainy season, let's clear our water bodies, let's engage how we go back to mining. We cannot stop or repair the tie or the track of a moving train as fast as it is speeding. We need to agree, and I'm not talking about state of emergency, that mining, regardless of where, should stop now for the next 90 days. Let's regroup, let's rethink, and see how we can launch back into responsible mining. If our food systems are being poisoned and we just look on, that we prefer to make the money, the people will not be around in a very short time to try and arrest the situation.
And still on issues of illegal mining in Galamsey, former Sangnarigu Member of Parliament Alhaji ABA Fuseni says expecting a solution to Galamsey in just 9 months is unrealistic, especially after 10 years of deeply rooted illegal mining. He acknowledged the public's right to demand accountability and urged Ghanaians to continue to mount pressure on government to solve it decisively.
President John Dramani Mahama has a bounden duty to fight Galamsey as fiercely as he can. And Ghanaians expect him to do that. There will be no excuses. And I'm sure by the end of his tenure, one of the key issues Ghanaians will use to assess his legacy is how much resolutely he has fought Galamsey. I'm sure the president himself knows that. But I can say without any iota of doubt that we are not there yet. Notwithstanding that, you can see that some important measures have been initiated. But I think that the pressure that the public is mounting is right. You should continue mounting the pressure on the government to ensure that we in the NDC will do the same thing. There are people who are saying that because of the enormity of the problem, President Mahama should declare a state of emergency. They have legitimate right to make those calls. The state of emergency is the last resort. So if you play your last card now, assuming without a meeting and it doesn't work, what do you do?
Let's now turn our attention to crime. The High Court in Wa has sentenced Elisha Mahama, the principal suspect in the murder trial of Eric Johnson, to life imprisonment. The jury returned unanimous 7-0 verdict. The then human resource manager of Jirapa Dubai guilty of murder, with 2 other accused persons acquitted and discharged. You recall that Eric Johnson, a businessman and owner of the hotel, was stabbed to death at his residence in Jirapa on February 11, 2024, and was found in a pool of blood the following morning, according to a police situational report. After nearly a year-long trial, today's judgment brings an end to the case. Speaking to journalists after the verdict, counsel for the Johnson family, lawyer Saeed Abdul Shakur, expressed relief.
Let's go to Parliament now, because the minority have been speaking about what you can see behind as a potential merger between AT and Telecel. So what we do know that the minority is raising is that they are asking government to reconsider their position on this particular move. You would recall it started in the erstwhile administration, but as it looks now, like the minority are raising concerns about it. So let's go and get the specific details, because the minority in Parliament wants government to halt plans to sell AT and migrate its customers onto the Telecel network, a move they fear could crush the sector. Ranking member on the Information and Communications Committee says that the President must order the sector minister to present the transaction to Parliament for scrutiny.
Communications Minister Sam George in September explained that to avoid a crisis, AT and Telecel were going to establish roaming to migrate AT's traffic onto Telecel. He attributed the decision to the disconnection of power to AT's radio access networks across the country by the American Tower Corporation due to an outstanding debt.
I need to be very, very clear on this, because we've seen media reportage. This is not a merger. It is also not an acquisition. We're dealing with a force majeure situation, and the work of the transaction advisor and the recommendations from their report will lay out a clear path for the consideration of government.
But the minority claims the minister is just rushing to dispose of AT owned by the state through an approved privatization.
The conduct of the Minister of Communication and his action over the past 6 months since he resumed office has put the industry in a jeopardy and has particularly diminished the value of the only wholly Ghanaian-owned telecommunication company, which is AT. Honorable Esla Owusu, in the mid-2021, announced a plan to recapitalize and modernize AT, focusing on network expansion, digital service, and rural connectivity. Why do you reject a $1 billion investment proposal from Recton and yet celebrate a $50 million upgrade from Telecel? The telecom market of over 1.3 million per month requires competition and not duopoly, which will effectively operate as a monopoly. Currently, AT has the most competitive billing rate for voice, which serves majority of low-income Ghanaians.
The minority has asked the president to direct the communications minister to halt the ongoing transaction and present all the details before Parliament for an inquiry to ascertain the fact to see if indeed the plan to merge AT with Telecel is in the interest of the state.
We asked the president, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, to direct his Minister for Communication to focus on making AT work rather than hastily trying to dispose it of. We are also sending a strong and unequivocal caution to Telecel Group that any attempt to acquire a strategic state asset through unlawful, non-transparent, or irregular means will not only lack legitimacy, but will also attract severe consequences in the future. We are therefore demanding an immediate stop to the current consolidation, acquisition, merger, or transaction, a comprehensive parliamentary inquiry into the circumstances and terms of the proposed consolidation, full disclosure of all agreements, correspondence, and reports, including the transactional advice, recommendations of Afrotech, Recton, highest and best use of AT Ghana.
Right, so let's take you a bit down memory lane and talk about this potential. We don't know what to even call it now because the current Minister for Communications, Sam Nartey-George, Member of Parliament, says it is not a merger, it is not an acquisition, it is a force majeure that is causing government to have to take a decision regarding AT. And this time we are talking about whether potentially they are going to merge or, put it together with Telecel Ghana. But it all started in April 2021 when the then Communication Minister, Madam Ursula Owusu-Ekufo, came public and said that government had acquired AT, and even AT used to be Airtel and then Tigo. Then they came together to be AirtelTigo, or now AT. So the government acquired it for $1 US. But the main concern here was the amount of debt that AT was under, which is 3.5 billion Ghana cedi debt. And they were also going through some severe financial stress. And fast forward 6 months after that, in 2023 June, AirtelTigo rebranded to AT Ghana. And this investment company, Hanam Investment, partnered to fund a network upgrade and at least help them to move from 3G to 4G and probably potentially to 5G. But beyond that, the situation still persists. The struggle they were going through still persists. So in November 2023, there was a joint venture with the Hanam Investment, and that was launched. And the issue that stands out in that particular investment venture was that all the staff members, about 300 of them, were still retained. So earlier, when government decided to fully take over AT, there were concerns about job losses, but the staff have been retained and are still working. And the concern again is all these people who are working are still being paid, but the company was not making as much revenue to sustain salaries and pay bills, etc. So fast forward as to the general idea of what exactly government wanted to do, AT Ghana remained fully state-owned 100%, but started these talks with Telecel Ghana. And we're still talking about 2024 under the former administration. Talks about Telecel Ghana, formerly Vodafone, Telecel Ghana taking over or merging with AT started coming into public conversations. And so that was what Sam Nartey-George, the current communication minister, reacted to say it's not a merger, it's not an acquisition, but there are some plans in the pipeline to look at how they can help AT survive. June 2025, a few months ago, government announced a merger plan with Telecel Ghana. And the real reason why they want this is to work around the monopoly of MTN, backed by a proposed $600 million investment. So if they're able to get the two networks to work together, it will show up their numbers in terms of their subscriber base. And then that can also bring stiffer competition in the telecom sector. So you and I, the regular users of mobile services, can be the beneficiary. So it was one of the key issues that was being looked at. September 2025, KPMG was appointed as the advisor on this potential merger. And there were plans to cover some 3.2 million customers, and then they still maintain their 300 employees. And we're given a 120-day period to come up with a proposal of how they can restructure the merger talks, who works where, how many staff will be retained, how many may be laid off, etc. Fast forward to October this month, what we are being told is that the merger talks are still in progress. AT Ghana holds about 781.8 million Ghana cedis in terms of their assets. Now, this is where the concern is. 3.5.6 billion in terms of liabilities, which is the debts they carry. And then also there is a 2.78 billion in terms of equity while operating at a loss. So many people on this network, AT, have been complaining about the current challenge and concerns about data and call cost. But the minority in parliament says that if you merge these two, we are going to have a duopoly, which is just MTN, and then whatever name, when they merge, they will become just those two. But when you have Telecel, you have AT, there is MTN, then it allows for, you know, a lot more competition in the telecom sector, where people can also freely choose where they work. We'll try and get further clarity on this from the current minister, and also look at the numbers, because MTN is an ocean apart from these two in terms of their subscriber base, and that monopoly is what is one of the key concerns why this potential merger could be happening anytime soon. We'll update you if it does happen. Back to you, Aisha.
Right, Martin. Let's now do some politics. NPP flag bearer hopeful Brian Achampong says restoring discipline within the party will be a top priority if he becomes leader. The Abetifi MP and former Greek minister insists that only strong leadership and the consistent enforcement of party rules can restore order and respect for authority within the NPP.
With several concerns that discipline within the New Patriotic Party has weakened, while internal structures have often been ignored and decisions challenged publicly, flag-bearer hopeful Brian Achampong says that can change with firm and decisive leadership.
It purely has to do with leadership. If you have a strong leader who has control over the system and the setup and then the establishment, discipline will be restored. And when you cross the line and people know that there will be clear sanctions, okay, then they know how to play within the zone. But where people cross the line, and because of their positions, whatever positions that they hold, they are not sanctioned, then they continue to do the same. You can be sure that when I have the opportunity to be the flag bearer of this party, we will enforce the rules on our books, that if you cross the line, there will be sanctions.
He threw subtle jabs at fellow aspirants, questioning their ability to lead if they cannot control the conduct of their own supporters.
And we always find a way to encourage our supporters here at the National Campaign Office to stay away from even propaganda against our opponents. All the people that are speaking against other people, we know them and we know who they support. And if you cannot control your own people, how can you lead?
Addressing journalists in Accra, the former Greek minister, while rubbishing recent opinion polls predicting the party's flag-bearer race, calling them totally meaningless, says he's confident of victory in the party's primaries.
They do not concern me. Most of these polls are psychological operations on the system. Totally meaningless. I don't intend to sponsor polls in my favor. I mean, I've seen some polls that put me at 1%, and some aspirants who are not even going, who have not left their bedrooms at 20%. And it's quite interesting, some of these polls. So please, I'm not concerned about that at all. The day of the election, January 31st, we will all see what the real polls look like.
On to some other stories now. The IGP's Special Operations Team has once again demonstrated its dedication to protecting lives and maintaining peace, this time through a rare act of compassion. The team donated blood for the Bole District Hospital following the acute shortage for patients in and around that enclave on admission.
Led by DSP Karim Mahama and ASP Bawa Abdul Jalil, the team embarked on a comprehensive day patrol across the Bole Township and surrounding communities as part of ongoing efforts to sustain law and order. During the exercise, the team made an unscheduled stop at the Bole District Hospital, where their colleague had been admitted the previous day in urgent need of blood transfusion. With the hospital's blood bank running low, doctors could only administer 1 pint of blood, far below the officer's required volume for recovery. In an extraordinary display of solidarity, the entire team volunteered to donate blood not only for their colleague, but also to replenish the hospital's depleted supply for other patients in critical condition.
It is very necessary for us to understand that to protect life and property is not just a matter of holding the weapon, but in this manner, as we have done this morning, it's a clear indication that we are truly there for the people of this country. As we have donated and we are here on operation, it is incumbent on us to make sure that we feed well.
Hospital authorities expressed profound appreciation, describing the gesture as a life-saving intervention at a time when voluntary blood donations remain low in the district. They also commended the police team for exemplifying through community service beyond law enforcement duties.
You are the special team from the IGP command, and really, you have done something for the hospital that we can never forget.
The team later engaged with medical staff on health and wellness practices. After the hospital visit, the team resumed patrols in areas previously marked as crime-prone, including marketplaces, schools and border communities. According to the command, the exercise forms part of the IGP's broader peace-building strategy across the Savannah region. Meanwhile, the Minister for the Interior, acting on the advice of the Regional Security Council, has renewed the curfew in Bole Township and its environs from 12 midnight to 5 a.m. However, carrying firearms, ammunition, or any offensive weapons remain strictly prohibited. No 2 or more persons are permitted to ride on a single motorbike during the day. Wearing war regalia in any form is also banned. Government has urged chiefs, opinion leaders, and the youth to exercise restraint and continue using non-violent approaches to resolving conflicts.
Very commendable act by the police officers there, and we hope that peace will return to all of these areas.
This is News 360. We have some business news coming up next. Stay with us.
I love President Charcoal. Why?
When there are so many other charcoal toothpaste.
There's both charcoal and lemon.
Oh, does it?
Yes. Look right here.
Yes. Pepsodent Charcoal has 2 of nature's powerful whitening ingredients. With the power of activated charcoal and lemon essence, it removes stains and whitens teeth naturally.
Convinced?
Well, I am. Just look at your beautiful Pepsodent smiles.
For naturally white teeth, Pepsodent Charcoal. Pepsodent.
Why are more and more professionals choosing Flamingo?
Good evening. This is Business News on News 360. My name is Minu Aful. Well, decades of government policies aimed at boosting domestic rice production and curbing costly imports have failed, leading to significant market failure in the rice sector, according to a new report from the Institute for Fiscal Studies. The think tank's key recommendation is that formal establishment of a rice development board.
The Institute for Fiscal Studies IFS report, increasing importation of rice in Ghana, can the country transform its fortunes in the rice sector, concludes that the primary cause of the poor performance is the government's policy of merely creating an enabling environment while expecting the private sector to independently address fundamental production constraints. The IFS argues this hands-off approach has resulted in a market failure, with private actors unable to fix issues like inadequate certified seeds, fertilizer supply, irrigation, mechanization and land access. Consequently, Ghana's actual rice output remains only a small fraction of its potential, while the nation's import bill continues its upward trajectory. According to Senior Research Fellow and Acting Executive Director at IFS, Dr. Said Bwache, IFS suggests the establishment of a legally and institutionally entrenched agency that would serve as the channel for all government interventions across the entire rice value chain, from production and harvesting to milling and storage.
I call for Rice Development Board to be formally established, go through Parliament with an act and everything, like Cocoa Board and others, so that you see that there's an agency that is entrusted with long-term vision to help develop the rice sector. The reason is that, yes, there's no Rice Development Board, for instance, in Vietnam or something like that. But the government, when they say they do it.
The IFS emphasizes that the Rice Development Board must be provided with adequate, specified funding to ensure its policies are sustained, guarding against the common Ghanaian political challenge of successive government discontinuing projects started by previous administrations.
In Ghana here, one government will bring a policy to, for instance, intervene in the rice sector, but another government will soon change. Policies started by previous governments are not continued by new governments. So to ensure that governmental intervention in the rice sector is entrenched.
The goal is to invigorate the sector to its full potential, transforming Ghana into a major net exporter of rice.
Away from that, Finance Minister Dr. Kasiela Toforsin has held a high-level meeting with President of the World Bank Group, Ajay Banga, to explore new pathways for Ghana's development and deepen ongoing cooperation. The talks, held on the sidelines of the IMF World Bank annual meetings in Washington, focused on scaling up investments in critical sectors that hold the key to Ghana's long-term growth.
The meeting centered on scaling up support for ongoing World Bank financed projects and introducing new initiatives to accelerate Ghana's transformation agenda. Both parties agreed to prioritize 5 key sectors: education, health, energy, roads and agriculture, identified as the pillars of Ghana's medium to long-term development. Dr. Forsen emphasized that the renewed partnership will help build a more resilient, inclusive and sustainable economy. He was joined by the Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Johnson Isiama, and Ghana's Ambassador to the United States, Victor Smith, at the high-level engagement. The Finance Minister expressed optimism that the renewed collaboration with the World Bank will fast-track Ghana's journey toward economic recovery and sustainable growth.
In more news tonight, Ghana's fintech industry is seeking clearer national policies that would not only protect consumers, but also boost Ghana's competitiveness in Africa's fintech space as it grows exponentially.
As Ghana's fintech industry continues to expand, the call for clear and forward-thinking regulation has never been louder. Speakers at the 2025 Fintech Forum highlighted how digital credit and digital assets, including cryptocurrency and tokenized products, are reshaping financial services across the country. CEO of Mobile Money Limited, Shaibu Haruna, shared some insights.
The point about this is that for customers who do take advantage of the system, you and I have to pay through higher interest rate in order to cover the risk. So it's important that for us to be able to bring down the cost of credit, we also need to take out the defaulters.
Executive Director of EcoBank's Consumer Banking, Tara Skwa, highlighted how fintech development is essential for Ghana.
If you listen to some of the panelists who spoke, they talked about blockchain, they talked about regulation, they talked about interoperability, they talked about cybersecurity. We need to come together because the fraudsters live with us, they are in our community, but they are not necessarily us. So help us to apprehend, and we also do our best to build better systems to protect the ecosystem and so to protect Ghanaians.
Stakeholders noted that while these innovations are driving inclusion and convenience, they also pose new regulatory and cybersecurity challenges. With the right policies and partnership, Ghana could become a leading fintech hub in Africa.
We'll wrap up the segment with updates from the forex and commodities markets. I am Minu Afo.